Hello and welcome to the Art of Plexiglas. My name is Robert Garza and I will be your instructor today. We're going to cover a lot of information about plexiglass. We're going to cut it, we're going to sand it, we're going to polish it, we're going to work on router tables with it, we're going to do a lot. We're going to bend it. So I'm going to put some information up on the screen from time to time. If you want to jot that down, you can follow along a little better. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a plexiglass window for a woofer box. And we're going to make that at a 3/4 inch plexi because it's a little more difficult than working with the thinner materials. First thing we're going to do to this is cut it on the table saw. We're going to round the corners on the router. We're going to bevel the edge. We're going to mask and tape off and paint the back. And then we're going to actually drill holes in it so that we don't crack it when we mount it to the woofer box. So I'll see you over at the saw. Okay, here we are at the table saw and we're ready to cut our 3/4 inch plexiglass. There's a lot of different ways you can cut plexiglass. The table saw is about the safest way of doing it. You can also cut it with a jigsaw, as long as you put a metal cutting blade in it, something with a lot of teeth in it. You get one of the wood blades, you're going to have some problems, you're going to really tear up the plexiglass. You can also use a bandsaw and a router. But for just cutting a basic square, we're going to use the table saw. And we're going to use an 80-tooth blade. You can see the differences right here. This is a combination for cutting wood. And this is the plexiglass 80-tooth no-melt blade. Now that you've had a chance to take a look at the saw blades, we're actually going to use one. We're going to cut our 3/4 inch piece of plexi down to 12 by 8. Now we could use a real big piece of plexiglass, but to save time I've kind of trimmed this one up a little bit. But we have plexiglass in just about every thickness. Sheet sizes are 16 by 32, 24 by 32, all the way up to a 4 by 8 sheet if you got lots of money to throw away. So here we go. I'm going to set my table saw for 12 inches. I've already cut the 8-inch side. Now you don't want to force it, just let the blade do the work. There you can see the saw blade scuffs. Not too bad. Now I'm going to mark that side saw blade scratches. We're ready to sand the piece now. And I want to show you a cool tool that not many people have, but we can get these for you. This is a scraper for plexiglass. It has a flat edge on one side. It has a bunch of different grooves on the inside here. And what you can do is just scrape the edges of your work and it'll give you a nice smooth finish. And then it takes very minimal sanding. But since this is 3/4 inch, this really doesn't work for us. The other tools that we have are DA sanders, and there's two different types of DA sanders. You have a rough sander, which usually has a handle on the end like this. Okay, those are for taking off more mass, not really so detailed. And then you have the palm sander, which is a detailed sander, and it's balanced really nice. It won't really shake a lot in your hands, and you can use the finer sandpapers on it to give you a real nice smooth finish. And of course, we have tons of sandpaper, everything from 60 grit up to 400. And we'll get started on that right away. I'm going to sand all the edges except for the edge that we marked saw, so I can give you a close-up look of what they look like. I'm going to start with the rough sander with an 80 grit paper on it. And what I'm going to do is just let one edge of the sander right along the material. I'm going to be careful not to be rolling the edges to keep the edges nice and flat, but basically just working my way down the piece. I'm only applying enough pressure to get all the saw scratches out. If you could hear when I was flattening out the sander, you could hear it chatter. That's not really giving you a good sand, so you want to make sure that you keep it tilted. For those of you who are pros, I know this is elementary to you, but for those of you that are not pros, I thought I'd go over the basics and then we'll get to the really cool stuff. Okay. Now we're going to hit it with some 120, and then we're going to do it with 220. Man, I love that sander. Okay. That is perfectly smooth. Now, if we were going to leave this baby square, because we had made the box so it would just press fit in without any radius, we'd be ready to go. Now we could buff the edge. We still need to mask it off and paint it a color. You can match it to the car or just paint it black. And we still need to do the drill holes. But I want to show you a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to radius the corners and go from there. So I'll see you at the router. Here we are at the router in our buffet of router bits. Wanted to show you those to you. We've got every router bit you can imagine and every size to do just about everything. And if they don't do it, what I always recommend is if you break a router bit, regardless of whose it is, save the parts, save the ball bearings, save the bushings, save everything, because then you can get really trick and use some router bits like say this flush trim bit here, where we put a 5/8 bearing on it and it gives us like a nice undercut. It's a very cool piece. But let's concentrate on what we're going to use for rounding the corners on this 3/4 inch plexiglass. We're going to use a flush trim bit and we're going to use a spiral flush trim bit. And this is what it looks like right here. And what that does is it spirals and it pulls the material down to the router table. Plus, it's really good for plastic and really good for aluminum. So you can use that. Now the basic flush trims look like this. You have 2 flutes on them. There's also a triple flute, which is great for plexiglass if you're going to be doing something a little finer and you want a real nice finish on it. So that's a good bit to use as well. But my favorite is the spiral, so that's the one we're going to use. Now many of you I'm sure have seen jigs, corner radius jigs, and we're going to have them in stock for you so you don't have to make them. I mean, they're just basic wood. But sometimes you just have no time to make them, and we're going to have them really inexpensively. So give us a call. Here's a few of them. We have a 1 inch, a 1/2 inch, a 3/4 inch, and a 1/2 inch radius. And for this piece, let's do something cool like a 1 inch radius. So let's do that one. First thing I need to do is set the height and make sure that the bit is going to cut all of the material. What I got in the router table is I have the 3 horsepower, 3¼ horsepower Porter cable. And what I'm doing with the cutting surface is I'm making sure it's just a hair above the plastic, so we make sure we get it all. And this is one of our router tables. You can go on our website and get the schematics for it. It has a vacuum system right here to grab any dust that's on top of the table. It also has a vacuum port underneath to suck down as much as possible. What you do with this corner radius is basically just attach it to the workpiece. Just put it right on top. It's got these little feet that rest right on the side, and it'll guide the bearing to cut the radius. And this is a 1 inch radius. So here we go. What's great about these templates, regardless if you make them or you get them from us, is you can round these edges very quickly. So I just did the one. Now we just take the piece up and do the other one, and do the other one, and so on. So there, we have our 1 inch radius on each one of the pieces. Okay, but we're not done yet. What I want to do is bevel the top edge. You can also do a round over or even a rabbet if you want to. There's a bunch of things you can do. This is real popular because it kind of looks futuristic with the 45-degree bevel on it. So let's put that on there. I've changed the blade. I've also changed the insert to an insert that had a larger hole. What we want to do now is raise the bit up high enough so it gives us the cut that we want, but not too high so that the bearing's not riding on the material. So we're going to look eye level with it and make sure that it's giving us the cut that we want. Now another trick to minimize sanding is let's cut 90% on the first pass. So we're going to extend it all the way up and then back it down maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Do one pass which does most of the work, so if there are any chatter marks in it, when we go around with 10%, it'll clean those up and give us a nice smooth surface. There's the close-up. So I'm going to back it down 10%. Lock down the router. and do a trim all the way around. Now I'm going to bring it up that other 10%. As you can see, we have a nice beveled edge already. And it looks pretty good, actually. I went nice and slow. A couple chatter marks, but not too many. So I'm going to put the piece right beside it. Bring it up just a little bit. And then run it again. And there you have it. Nice beveled top edge. Our next step is to drill the holes. And what we want to do to drill holes, we just don't want to use any normal drill bit that you can get at the hardware store. What you want is a plexiglass drill bit that has a special point on it so that it pumps the plastic out of the way, and also has a counter boring bit so that when it goes into the plexiglass, it gives you a flat surface so that when the screw goes into it, it holds on to it. Now you don't want to just do a countersink that gives you a V like this, because what it does is it applies pressure this way and you'll get a crack coming out the side. So always use a counter bore bit. It gives you a nice flat bottom. And I always recommend doing that on the drill press. So I'll see you over there. Whereas a drill press, and what I've done is I've made pencil marks where I want to have my drill holes, and I did them 2 inches apart all the way around. Again, showing you that bit, as you can see, it has a flat bottom on it. What I've done is I've set the gauge on the drill press so that it countersinks about 1/8 of an inch to flush in the screws. So you can see that right there. So now that we have our holes drilled, we're ready to buff it up. Okay, we're over at the buffer. This is a Baldor buffer. It's a 3/4 horsepower, 8-inch buffer. This is not something you normally see in install shops, but it's great for demonstrations and it's great for a big material. What you would normally see in some install shops is you can take one of your 6 or 8-inch grinders and put buffing wheels on them, and these will do just as good of a job. Might take you a little bit longer, but it'll still give you the same result. You can also use a die grinder with a smaller wheel on it, a nice 4-inch wheel. We even have them down to 1 inch for getting inside a little crevices, and we're going to do that a little later. But for this wheel, for this buffer, we use 8-inch buffers, 1 coarse on one side, 1 fine on the other, and we use 2 different compounds. We use a white compound, which is a medium compound, and we use a blue compound, which is a super fine compound for polishing after we've got a nice buff finish. We're going to hit this with it on the last pass, and it's going to go very, very clear as if we never even cut it. But before we do that, we need to make sure that we have all of our edges nice and sanded, so we're going to go through them once more and just take a look at them and see if there's any spots on them. Since we ran this on the router, we haven't sanded this 45 degrees, so I'm going to sand that now using our Palm DA with some 220 in it. Since we did that 90-10 split, there's very little imperfections in it and it's coming out very fast. Okay, we've done another sanding on our piece. All nice and smooth all the way around. Now we're ready to buff. Now when you're buffing, there's a couple things you want to remember. Hold onto your piece very tightly. Depending on the machine that you're using, if it's a grinder, these things are very strong. It'll take your piece and throw it right down to the floor. Notice the direction of the wheel is spinning. It's spinning in the downward motion. So your working area is right in front and all the way underneath. Never work on it in the back, on top like this, or in the back, because it's going to throw your piece next door, and the car stereo shop next door is going to get your piece and say, hey, I got a nice window. I'm going to put it in my car. Okay, so don't do that. So we're ready to go. We're going to turn the buffer on, and we're going to start buffing now. It's not the wheels that do the buffing, it's the compound that does the buffing. So you always got to make sure that your wheel is wet, so to speak. Make sure it's got compound on it. So we're going to start with the white. Put a little bit on there. And I'm going about 75% of my material. I'm making sure not to get close to this edge, because if I get close to this edge, it could grab the material and throw it to the floor. So I'm going all the way to this edge and about 75 or 80% up. I'm using about medium pressure and letting the wheel and the compound do the work. As you can see, I'm fluid, keep moving, not going to burn anything. And you want to add compound constantly. You can look at it two ways. You can use very little compound and spend a lot of time, or you can use a lot of compound and spend a little extra money but get it done a lot quicker. Okay, that one's just about done. Actually, one more pass. Okay. Now, since I got 80% of it done here, I'm going to flip it around and do the bottom section right here. Compound. Beautiful. Let me show you what this looks like. You can see the reflections of the light in it. I'll flip it around and try to do that same thing with this side. Now, that's DA'd with 220, but you can't see a glimmer in it. And then look at this side. It's perfectly clear. Where's that light? There it is. Perfectly clear. And that only took me a few minutes. So now you know how to buff plexiglass. And you can do this with a little tiny piece of material. You can do it with a great big piece of material, but those are the steps to go with. Now, I only did it with the white, but now what we always like to do is, if you really want to get it as if you never cut it with a saw or a router, is you touch it with the blue and it'll shine even that much more. All right, last step. We got to mask it off and paint it. And depending on what you're doing, if you're building a windshield for a car, SPO car, or building an enclosure, you can do anything now. You can cut it any shape, put any edge on it, buff it out, make it look really nice. So let's go over to the measuring table, get our ruler out, and we'll mask it off. I'll see you there. We're ready to mask it off, and what we need to do this are some spray paints. I brought a red and a black. Black's pretty popular, but it's very cool when you mask these off and match the color of the car. It's something a little different. It goes more along with the theme of the vehicle. And what you need is a steel ruler is what I recommend. I like to use a square sometimes. Gives me a straighter line. Okay. And a pen or a pencil. The last thing you need is an alpha knife or some type of razor blade. These are really nice. These alphas, the stainless steel, are real popular with the tinners and work real well. So the first thing we want to do is mask off the border that we want. Now, if we want a 1/2 inch border, mark a 1/2 inch. You want a 1 inch border, mark a 1 inch. Regardless of what you want, you mask it off. We're going to draw the line on it first so we know that it's going to look good. We can get an idea of what it's going to look like. What I'm doing is, since I already drew all the lines for the holes, I'm going with the very edge, maybe about 1/8 of an inch inside from the drill hole all the way around. So it goes a little bit quicker. You don't really have to do this twice. So now that we have that done, we just take our razor and our ruler and line that baby up. Now, we can do this two different ways. We can put a little radius on the corners, make it look a little cooler. We can use just about anything that's round. And I bet you I might have a quarter in my pocket. I do. What we can do is take a quarter, or you can take a socket, or center of a hole saw, just about anything you want. And we can draw it on there. Take our knife And you want to apply just a little bit of pressure, better a little pressure than too much because you don't want to cut the plexiglass. And just apply a little bit of pressure and follow the quarter around. And we'll do all 4 corners. Okay, all 4 corners are done. Now with the razor, now a lot of guys don't know where to start and where to stop cutting, so what you can do is take your pencil and right where you see the radius stopping, just put a little line there. You can see it in the paper. Just put a little line. And then you can see where to stop. You don't have to cut off into the painted area, which won't look very good. And the straight lines are very easy because you're just following the metal ruler right to the line. Make sure you hold the ruler so it doesn't move. Okay, I've cut them all. Now the paper, the masking that's on all plexiglass is vacuumed to it. There's no airspace in between that, or very little airspace, but virtually no airspace between that and the plexiglass. So it's the best masking you can have. It's almost better than having masking tape. So we're going to pull the edge up. And after we pull the edge up, we can spray paint it. You really don't need to use a glossy paint. You can use any color paint. Flat black is just about the most popular. You can paint it on there, and I would say dust one coat on, let it set, and then spray another coat on it and let it dry completely before you mess with it so you don't get any scratches in the paint. And then you can install it, and it'll be beautiful. The next piece that we're going to do, we're going to get a little more complex, where we're going to make an amplifier cover, as if we were going to make an amplifier rack and a piece of plexiglass that'll press fit into a wooden form. And we're going to be doing a lot more routering, and we're also going to be doing a router video, which will be the next one that we do, and it'll encompass how to make these amp racks and all the tricks and how all this buffet of rabbit bits and router bits and this, that, and the other work. So make sure you call us about that piece. So let me get ready for the next piece and I'll be right back. Now that we're done with our plexiglass window, and I've shown you how to cut the plexiglass, I've shown you how to sand it, I've even showed you how to polish it, make it real pretty. We drilled it, did some counter boring. We're going to move into something a little more difficult and make an amplifier cover that'll consist of a 1/2 inch piece of MDF and a 3/8 thick piece of plexiglass. For demonstration sakes, we're just going to stick with squares because they seem to work. We're going to assume that we want a 12-inch window. And so I have a piece of 12-inch acrylic here. It's 3/8 inch thick, and it's just saw cut at the moment. Okay? I have a 16-inch by 16-inch piece of MDF. This is 1/2 inch thick, and we can use just about any thickness we want. Now what we're going to want to do is put a hole in this that will almost flush mount the acrylic into it. Now sometimes, depending on the application, you want it flush, sometimes you want it sticking up a little bit, and I'll show you what we come up with, which is kind of something in the middle with a tapered edge. It'll look really nice. Our first step is to cut a blank that resembles our window. Now if you can notice here, it's an inch smaller. Okay, this is an 11-inch square, or this is a 12-inch square. Now this can be any size. It can be a rectangle, it can be a square, a round, a square, anything you want. What we want to do is center that on our piece. And what I like to use is a combination square. What's really nice is you can put it right up against the material, and you can drag it along and check all 4 sides to make sure you're right where you're at. Now since we have 2.5 inches difference, I'm just going to set my square right at 2.5. And I'm going to set one side, and I'm going to set the front. And this is kind of like a rough setting right now until I get it a little closer, then I push on it a little less. Next thing you want to do is grab out of your trash can a bunch of pieces of MDF. 1/2 inch is about the best. Run it through your saw and make a bunch of 3/4 inch strips, and they can be any length. And hold on to these babies. Just get a coffee can and stick them in there, because I'm going to show you how valuable these are. Take 4 of them, and what we're going to do with them is place them without moving the centerpiece around the blank that we made that was actually 1 inch smaller. And we're going to start with the first 2 in place. And as you can see, they're longer than I need. They're hanging over quite a bit, but that doesn't matter. What I'm going to do here is hold these 2 together tight and put 2 staples in them. I'm using a brad that's about 1/4 of an inch longer than the material that I'm shooting through, just so it holds it in place. I continue working my way around. I'm going clockwise, but you can go counterclockwise. It doesn't really matter. And I'm just doing the corners. Now, before you put in this last one, you got to be careful, because you could staple it in there and you won't be able to get your blank out. So this is the trick. You pull it up beforehand, stand it on this end here, because you already have something that's going to stop it there. Put it in its place. Check it and make sure we're square. Okay, we're square. Okay, so now that I got the few in, I'm going to go back around and put one in about every 2 inches. That's what we're going to do, is use that as a guide for the router bit. Now we're going to cover a lot of this in more detail on our router bit video, so definitely get your hands on that, but this is going to show you something that's really along the lines of plexiglass and making plexiglass windows fit. Now what I've chosen for this is I've chosen the 3/4 inch bit as opposed to the 1/2 inch bit, so it'll give us a little bigger radius. A little bigger radius sometimes looks a little more difficult to make as opposed to a real sharp edge. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that and be right back with you. So here we go. We got our 3/4 inch. The only other thing we're going to need is a hole in our material. Now make sure that you don't do it too close to the edge, because then you could ruin your piece. I would say come in a good, 1.5 to 2 inches. There, we've got our hole. Put that into our vacuum. The next thing is to set the height of the bearing. So what I want to do is make sure that we have enough blade to cut all the material, make sure that the bearing is going to touch our guide, but make sure that we're not too high and too short. So I'm going to set that and take a look at that. And that would be a little bit high. So I'm going to back it down. I'm turning the blade so I can make sure that it's on the cutting edge, as one may say. And they say if you're on the cutting edge, you're also on the bleeding edge. Okay. There's our hole. It's 11 inches square. Now remember that our window is 12 inches square. So we're going to take off our guides and throw them away. Last thing I like to do, just to make working on a router table a little easier, is I like to do a little quick sanding on it, because you have these brad nail holes that are sticking up. Okay. There we have the beginning of our AAMP rack cover. The next step is to rabbet out 1/2 of an inch all the way around so our plexi window fits. I'm going to change the blade real quick and we'll keep moving. I've changed the router bit to the rabbet number 4. The rabbet 4 comes with a few different bearings and will give us different rabbeting depths. The biggest rabbet it'll give us is 1/2 inch, and what we want to do is cut out a 1/2 inch rabbet so that we can press fit in the plexiglass. What I need to do is set the height of the rabbet so that the bearing can ride along the piece and still give us our cut. I'm going to set that to 1/4 inch. So I'm going to set that now. How I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it so you can see, but I'm going to use a ruler and set the cutting blade 1/4 inch off the surface. Since the material will be riding on the surface, you can see that. There. A little bit less, right there. That's 1/4 inch. Okay? So we're going to tighten that down real good. The other thing to remember is, hopefully you have a variable speed router, because if you have a router that's spinning 20,000 RPMs with a flush trim bit, when you put a rabbet bit on it, you have to multiply that by the diameter of the router bit. And you put one of our big router bits on there, like this one, you're going to be spinning so fast at the outside, you're going to burn anything you try to cut with it. So you need to slow the router down a little bit. And what I like to do is I start it at its slowest setting and move it up till it sounds just about right. That's its slowest setting, but it's really a little bit too slow. There, that sounds good. We're going to turn the vacuum on. We're ready to go. We've got a nice 1/2 inch rabbet, 1/4 inch thick all the way around, 1/4 inch deep all the way around. Let's grab our plexi window and see if it fits. Well, it's not gonna fit. Well, why isn't it gonna fit? We cut an 11-inch blank and we took a 1/2 inch all the way out. A 1/2 inch all the way around. Well, if we stand it up, it fits lengthwise without a problem. The problem is the radius that's in these corners. Then we have the 3/4 inch radius that we were riding along, plus the radius of the rabbet bit itself. So what we need to do is match that radius on the plexiglass. And how are you going to do that? Well, it's actually a very simple answer. We're going to make a radius jig to cut the plexiglass. These are radius jigs. There's my 1/2 inch, my 1 inch, 3/4 inch, 1.5 inch, probably the easiest one to see. And they're basically just made out of 1/2 inch MDF, and they have some feet on them, and they got a little hole so I can hang them on the wall. And we're going to be offering a bunch of different sizes to get you guys started, but I'm going to show you how to make them so you can make them on your own or you can get them from us. Okay? The first thing you need to do is find out what your radius is. That's job number 1. And you can do that a variety of ways. You can get some change out of your pocket. You can get some sockets out of your toolbox. I have some hole saws that I'll show you. Let's say, I know everybody's got hole saws. And hopefully everybody's got change in their pocket. But let's say we're going to take this radius and just push it in on here and see if it fits nice. And you can take a look at it and kind of tell that it should go 90 degrees on the radius. It should fit in there 90 degrees. Maybe you can see that. Okay, and this piece really doesn't fit 90 degrees. Okay, it's a little too small. Let's try this one. Almost, but not quite. If you look at this one, that one is almost a perfect fit. But you see the gap in the corner? Okay, so it's not a perfect fit. This one actually is the perfect fit. But if we cut a hole with this and we leave room for the teeth, we're going to have the center, which is a smaller piece of wood, and it's not going to do us any good. So what I'm going to do is cut a hole with this hole saw and see what that gives us. And I've already cut it. Stay there. Here it is. This is the blank that we all throw on the ground. And it fits in there perfectly. Covers all 90 degrees. And then there's a couple different ways of doing this. We could just take this radius and double stick tape it to the corner. As easy as that. Just double stick tape it, making sure that both 90-degree edges are not hanging over but flush with the plexi, and you could run it around a flush trim router and it'll give you that perfect radius. But there's a better way. The better way is to make an actual jig like the one I showed you. And all you need is a square scrap piece of MDF and a couple other small pieces. And basically these sizes, this is a 4x4 by ½ inch, and these are 1 inch by about 4 inches as well. So 3 pieces of wood. Now the first step to making one of these is to get the actual radius on the 4x4. So what we want to do is brad nail our blank right to the top of that. If you can zoom in on that so you can see it. Okay. So we're touching here, just barely, and also on the other side. And we're going to brad nail it right on there. Okay, I've changed the router bit to a ½ inch flush trim. This just happens to be one of the extra long ones, but you can use any flush trim bit at all. Okay. And I'm going to adjust it so that the bearing rides along our template, if you will, the disc. Okay. Now you have to be very careful when you're doing this. This is a real small piece of wood. You got to hold on to it very tightly. Very tightly. Okay, here we go. So we took the disc off. We have our 4-inch piece. I'm going to take a little bit of sandpaper. Just kind of sand the excess off of it. Next step is take your 2 1-inch pieces. Now this is very important for placing it, and you want to place these with a ½ inch. So what you want to do is find the 90-degree spot and glue and staple the side pieces in. Now if you don't put them in the right place, you're not going to get the right angle, because you're going to have something like that looks kind of like this, and it's really not going to do the job. Since it is 90 degrees, you're almost better off being a little farther back than you are a little farther forward. So we're going to find our 90-degree point on these, including the bit, because the bit is a ½ inch in diameter, so we really want to put one of the cutting blades on the 90-degree mark to make sure that we cut all 90 degrees. And then we're going to glue and staple it right there. So when we're done with our jig, it looks just like this. It's been glued and stapled. And a cool idea is to leave it about 1/8 of an inch up on one side and about 3/8 of an inch up on the other side. That way you can use it on 2 different thicknesses of material, or a bunch of different thicknesses, but you can use it this way on 1/8 of an inch or thinner, and then flip it over this way and you can use it on just about anything. Okay? So we have our radius jig that we made. Now we're going to take our 12 by 12 by 3/8 inch thick plexi, and it's amazing what you can find in a garbage can, isn't it? Okay. So we just fit it on, just like this on the corners. Just kind of fits right in place. Let the bearing right along the jig, and it'll cut your plexiglass in a perfect radius. And there we have it. That didn't take long at all. What's really cool about these radius jigs is you have a bunch of them like I do, and you just hang them up on the wall, and you have one for just about every scenario, everything from 1/2 inch up to 4 inches. After we've cut the plexi, what you want to do is take a little 120 or 220, just take the paper off the corners. This is what I like to do so I can see the work a little better. And all I'm doing is I'm brushing against the paper just to cut it off. Helps me to see the radiuses a little better. And now we can take a look at those radiuses and see if they're nice and smooth, see if we got any big dimples in them. And if we got a big dimple in it because we shifted it with our hand, that's not a big deal. You just take a little sandpaper, your DA, and sand it. But we already covered that, so we're going to move forward and bring out our template that we started with. Here's the template that we started with. We started actually with a blank sheet of 16 by 16. We cut out an 11-inch hole for a 12-inch window. We rabbited 1/2 inch. We have our radius in here by the rabbit bit, and now we've got our window. Look at that. It fits perfect. Now if you wanted to, depending on what you're working on, if you're going to paint the wood, you'd want to leave it nice and tight like this. But if you're going to cover it in vinyl or carpet, you would make your blank just a little bit smaller. Say for instance, if you're going to do vinyl, you're going to want to make it 1/8 inch smaller, then you'll have a 1/16 inch all the way around, so that you can wrap the vinyl inside and you'll have space for it. But I made this one for paint because that's kind of the latest craze right now. The other thing we can do with this, and I kind of showed you earlier with doing a 45, is we can put an edge on the top of this, and so when it press fits in, it'll kind of roll right into the material, so you have your painted surface rolling into the plexiglass. It'll look really cool. Okay, now we're ready to do some complex shapes. What I want to show you are speaker rings. We have speaker rings in every size for a tweeter all the way up to a 12-inch woofer. And they're made out of 5/8 MDF. They're machined on a CNC, so they're very accurate. And what we did is we took an average of speaker sizes and made these speaker rings. So if they're a little bit off on the inside or outside, you can just trim them on a router table. But the basic idea is already made for you, and you can cut down the blood off your fingers and save a lot of time because you already have them in stock. What I'm going to make for you is a plexiglass speaker ring. We're going to make a 6.5 just for the demonstration. And you can use this technique for ABS. We have some ABS laminates. You can use it for carbon fiber, wood grain, all different types of grains to match what's inside the car. It looks really cool. It covers up the screws, has a really nice clean look. If you've been into some of the IASCA finals, you'll see some of these cars that use these speaker rings, and a lot of guys are like, well, how do you make them? Well, I'm going to show you right now. Your first step is obviously pick your material. We're going to use acrylic. This is actually smoked acrylic. And what you can do with smoked acrylic is you can light it later on, and we're going to get into that later on in the video. We're going to show you how to light with neon and LEDs. But I use smoked so you can see it better on camera. And we're going to take our speaker ring and some 3M double-sided tape, which works real well. Take our Alpha knife. And we want to put as much tape on it as we can get away with, because we don't want it moving. And what's really nice about these speaker rings is you can use them as templates for the router table if you're cutting this side or the other. It works out real well. I'm just going to go around and trim off the excess. All right. So we take our piece, and I like to lay it close to a couple of edges so it's a little easier to cut. Push it on there real good. I'm going to use our flush trim router bit. And we're going to cut out the outside, and we're going to cut out the inside, and we're going to have our ring. I always like to cut the inside first so that I have more mass. It's less likely for me to crack it, and you have to be very careful because you crack it, you got to start all over. So I'm going to put a 1/2-inch hole in here. A couple things I want you to remember is, if you've noticed, I'm keeping equal pressure on the ring and on the plastic so that the adhesive isn't doing all the work. So I'm trying to hold both at the same time. What I'm also going to do is, I'm getting about 1 inch before I'm finished, is I'm going to pull this center and hold onto this piece and pull it away from the piece that's being cut. And as soon as I'm finished, I'm going to lift it out and throw it in the trash. One thing I want you to notice are actually the shavings. They didn't melt together as I was cutting. It's very important that you let the bit do all the cutting, don't force it. If it starts to melt, then it'll start ruining your piece, it'll start actually digging in, and then you won't have the same diameter you started out with. So it's very important to let the bit do its job. Okay. Now that we have our piece cut out, we have the center cut out, we have the outside cut out, we don't want to take it off yet, because now is the perfect time and the safest time to shape it. And we can do a bunch of different shapes on it depending on the thickness of the material, the plastic, whether we're going to relaminate it and make it even thicker. What we want to do now is router it, whether we're going to put a 1/4 round on it or a 45. Now is the time to do it, because we have a good 5/8 piece of MDF attached to it. It's real solid and a lot safer than using just a 1/4 inch piece of acrylic on here. It'll just break on you. Okay, we have our piece. I've changed the router bit to a 1/4 inch roundover bit. And we want to line it up and take off just a little bit so it gives us a nice rounded edge. So hypothetically speaking, this was going to be the outside edge. So when you saw the speaker in, say, the kick panel, it had just a nice rounded edge, look really nice and custom, and we'll sand it and polish it, make it look really nice. So check out this bit here. I'm going to set the router bit, and as you can see, you may look at me and say I'm doing it backwards because I have the wood on the bottom side, but if you turn this side over and you got all this frilly stuff in the way, it kind of makes it tough to see. So I like to turn it over because it's going to cut the same amount out of the plastic as it would out of the wood. So as you can see, I got it set up there just to give us a nice rounded edge, and the bearing is going to follow along the wood. So here's our piece. Has a nice radius on it. The other thing I'm just going to do is take my piece of sandpaper and trim off the paper so I can see the piece. Okay, now all depending on what you're working on, we can leave this right here, or we can take it a couple steps further. We could round out the inside, say for sound quality reasons, or you wanted to give it that flare on the inside. So I'm going to do that as well. And let me trim that real quick. It'll only take me a second. As you can see here, we've rounded the inside and the outside. It's kind of hard to believe that's only a 1/4 inch acrylic. It makes it look much bigger. And this is how you can get away with some really cool looks. And now we have some options here. Since it's tinted, we could paint the back of it black and it'll look just black. It'll have a nice high gloss, really deep look to it. Okay, I sanded that up real quick. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to buff half of it, and then I'll show you what half of it looks like buffed, and we'll paint the back of it black, and you'll be able to see what it looks like and get a cool effect. You've already seen me on the buffer, so I'm just going to buff that up and I'll bring it right back. You can see up here at the top, it's all nice and buffed, even on the inside. Okay, but you can see over here, sanded. Now you can do that depending on what the effect you want. You leave it sanded like this, it'll give you a frosted look. So I'm going to paint the back of it. First I'm going to have to separate it. Separating it, you want to be very careful. All right. Got it separated. I'm going to pull the masking off. Before I paint it, I want to zoom in on it for you one more time. I just want to show you the thickness of this and show you how almost impossible it would be to make without the MDF ring. Okay, that is really tiny. So let's paint it. We got our flat black. I didn't do any prepping, just pull the masking off. A little test spray. I just hit it with a nice light coat. If this were for an install, I'd let that dry and hit it with a second coat. But this is just for TV land. So I'm going to bring it over while it's still wet. Pull off the front masking and zoom in on it and show you how beautiful this is. Okay. And there it is. You can see where I've sanded it and where I've buffed it. And look how thin it is. And that'll look awesome over a nice pair of mid-ranges in your door. All right. Now that was somewhat basic in the realm of complicated shapes, but it is still a complicated shape. What I'm going to show you next is how to make something like this, where you have a kick panel, where you have your 5 1/4, 6 1/2, 4 inch, depending on the vehicle, and your tweeter. And you're going to need to learn to make jigs for just about anything you want to make. Once you can make it out of wood, make it out of MDF, then you can make it out of acrylic using the same procedure. Think of it as an MDF ring, only you're going to get a little crazy with the shapes. This is just your basic teardrop. I guess it would be that way. Okay? And how I made this was I took a couple of our rings, the 2 inch and the 5 1/4. The 2 inch is really for a tweeter. I took those two. Okay? And then you remember all those little sticks that I told you about? I just took these little sticks and I cut them on the chop saw and I placed them inside. I'm going to zoom in on that, you can see what I'm talking about. And then I followed the same procedure and I came up with this. And now I can take this shape and just like you saw me cut the plastic, we can cut plexi mirror for an insert. Okay? You can do it with carbon fiber, which is really hot right now. You can do it with burl or wood grain, anything. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to take this to another very cool level by making multiples. Once you make your master, you take your master and you hang it up on the wall and you mark it whatever 5 1/4 inch tweeter, kick panel, because you can take this master and make just about any base for it. So as you can see, I got 3 of them. I made 2 extra. And the next product I'm going to show you is called low heat plastic. And what that low heat plastic will do is it'll expedite your manufacturing of a kick panel or door panel. So here we go. Let me just clean up this mess and I'll show you that in 1 second. Okay, we have our template that we made out of the 2 MDF rings. I cut 2 more blanks. Now, depending on what you're working on, you can go anywhere with this. You can make 1/4 inch plexi insert. You can make an 1/8 inch insert, an 1/8 inch insert, and then a grill, no grill, aluminum insert with a grill. You can do anything. So what you need to know is what you're going to do so you know what thickness you need, okay? What What I'm going to do is I'm going to make believe that we're going to use an 1/8 of an inch insert on here, and then also an 1/8 of an inch grill cover. And we'll take the grill cover and it'll press fit into here. Okay, so how we're going to do that in a much faster way than normal is we're going to use this low heat plastic. Okay, we sell it in huge sheets. I'll show you one of them. And it comes in this big sheet. Okay, for very little money, under 10 bucks, I'm sure. And I'm going to need my square. I need my compound square, combination square. I'm going to need my combination square. And I'm going to measure how much height I'm going to need from the very base of the master. And the master is going to actually hold the speaker, and everything's going to go on top of that. So you're going to have the speaker, then you're going to have your insert, whether it be the acrylic or an ABS or carbon fiber, whatever, and then you're going to have your snap-in grill. So this is 1/2 of an inch, and if we add 1/4 of an inch, that would give us 3/4. I'm going to give us a little extra room for play because you're going to have screw tops. So those usually take up about 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to go with 7/8. So we have 7/8 from the very base to the very top. Okay? So I cut these strips 7/8 of an inch in length. And it's low heat plastic. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 pieces that we have as opposed to using one. Because if we only use one and we wrap this around here, then we could get it to fold in and it won't give us a real true nice setting. So I'm going to put the 2 together and I'm going to brad nail them . Okay, that's just to hold them into position. So we have this piece here is about 1 inch thick now. And what I want to do with the low heat is line it up with the master or the base and start on a very flat surface. You're not going to want to start up here at the tweeter because mating the 2 pieces together once you get all the way around is going to be very difficult. So start here. So I'm lining it up with the base here. And what I'm going to do is staple it on here and heat it up with a heat gun. Here. Now we're going to warm up our heat gun. These are Steinel heat guns made in Germany, the best. Okay, I think I've had this one for at least 5 or 6 years. Dropped it at least 10 or 20 times, and it's totally awesome. Another good idea is to use a nice flat table when you're working on this so that you make sure that it's flat all the way against the bottom. Okay? So we've got our first staple in. And I'll line it up here with this edge. Now it's time to bend it. Since it's very low heat, just watch this. I'm going to keep the gun moving. Trying not to overheat it. Since it's a low heat plastic, it'll bend very easy. Just imagine how creative you can get with a bunch of different shapes. You can see. Now I'm going to lay it on the table. Make sure it's wrapped around snug. I'm going to put my staples in it. I'm pulling it a little bit here. I'm watching for gaps along the edge. And then I'm kind of pushing it against here. Because when it cools, it's going to hold its shape. And I'm using 1/4 inch staples. You can look at the surface and know if you're overheating it. It'll actually get real pale. And I'm trying to bring that all the way around so I can hold on to it on the other side. What I want to do here is I'm going to take the razor and cut it right at the seam and then seam it together. And I'm going to cut it with my cool new Alpha knife. I'm just going to use the other piece as a guide, push straight down. And you can see it'll give me a real nice seam right there. We've got a trim all the way around it. Now that gap is pretty big. It's bigger than I expected. So I'm going to show you this other new product that we started selling. And I'm going to show it to you a couple of times, so I won't get too detailed right now. But I want to show it to you. This is hot stuff. It's a type of super glue. It's a cyryl acrylate. And there's 3 different colors. Okay, you have the red, the yellow, and the green. Basically think of the red as the fast stuff, the yellow as you're still stepping on the gas, and the green is ultra filling. It's really thick. And what we can do with that is take this green stuff and fill this gap and hit it with the accelerator, and it will sand just like one piece of plastic. You can see it's almost like a gel coming out. And I'm holding it on there long enough so it goes all the way to the wood. And I'm not really worried about it puddling up on top because it sands beautifully. Okay. Then I'm going to hit it with the activator. Okay, and give that a minute. Then I'll hit it with the sandpaper. We've put our low heat plastic around our master. We've stapled it on, we've heated it up. We've used our Super T gap filler, the hot stuff, the green. It's the thickest stuff. We filled it in there. We sprayed it with a little bit of activator. It's nice and dry. And I can sand it now as if it were one piece of plastic. Okay, you can see there. Show you the side view. Okay. It may look like there's a gap there because the glue is clear, but it's just about flat. So I'm going to pull the insert out, and you can take a look at this piece. Okay. Now we have a nice rim all the way around it. So we can take our master and make those inserts. And for instance, I have that red insert I showed you earlier. That will press fit in here. Look how cool that is. Okay. Now the other part of this is only one part of it. The next thing you have to do is actually mold it to the car. And I'm going to show you how you can do that very quickly. And if you've seen our fiberglass videos with our mold fabric, we're going to be introducing a new mold fabric that's going to be called the micro, and it's going to be half the weight for doing smaller jobs like this, so definitely call us about it. But all you need to do with this, since it's a low heat plastic, what you want to do is rough it up with 60 grit all the way around, inside and out. And the reason you want to do the inside now is because when you're, depending on what you're going to wrap it with, you want your glue to stick, okay? The super glue stuff is awesome if you're having trouble sticking vinyl into a little tiny area. Just put a little bit of that and you're ready to rock and roll. Now, let's hypothetically say that this is your door panel, okay? And we want to mount this on it at some kind of crazy shape. Now, I've gone over this in some of our other videos, but I want to show you how cool this plastic, I want to show you how cool this glue is. So we're going to take the yellow stuff, which is the middle of the bracket there, and we're going to take some little standoffs that I cut, and I'm just going to basically glue them right where I want them. I'm going to put a little dot on the wood. I'm going to spray it with I'm going to first dip the wood into it so both pieces of wood get soaked. I'm going to spray it with the activator. Stick them back together. Okay, there's number one. And I'll take the shorter one and put it over here. So I found my spot. I'll put a little bit of the glue, soak it to both pieces. Hit it with the activator. Hold it there for a couple seconds. Now we've got 2 legs to stand on. Nothing like having 2 legs to stand on. Okay. One more leg for a little more stability. And then I'm going to put glue on each one of the legs. Set it right where I want it. Now I didn't activate it this time. So when you activated it, it's instant. As soon as you put them back together, they're glued. Now on these inside pieces, I'm putting a little extra. And then I'm going to activate it from the inside. Okay. Give that a few seconds. Okay, here we have it. All glued and ready to go. It's that strong. Can't do that with hot glue that fast. Okay, so all you would have to do now is take our mold fabric or the micro mold fabric and wrap it just like you saw in our fiberglass video. Soak it with resin and you're ready for a door panel or a kick panel. You can mount this any way you want. You can even mount it right in the car, pull the mold off the car, whatever. And then you take your insert from your master, press fit it in there. You got your speakers in there already. You can't see any screws. You can use the same master to make your grill, covered up with grill cloth, and you're ready to rock and roll. Now I've showed you how to make these templates with the speaker rings. Now all you need to do is use your double-sided tape, and you can make just about anything. This is a plexi mirror purple piece. You can make it out of clear acrylic, carbon fiber, ABS with the wood grain material on it. You can do just about anything. You can get pretty crazy depending on how much time you want to spend, and you can make your store logo or one of the other products' logos and put them in the card regardless of what size you want them. Now we've made those, but we've also have this piece which is negative, and we use this piece to make a 3/4 inch thick logo of our company. Let me turn it around there so you can see it. Okay, it's all been polished, and this is an extreme version of what you can do using this procedure. You make the template out of wood. Wood's fairly easy to use. You can sand it and shape it, and if you really mess it up, you can kind of start over. But once you have your template, you're ready to go and make something very beautiful. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to form plexiglass, form ABS, and we're going to do some really crazy shapes, some half rounds, okay, consistent half rounds like this. This is eighth of an inch. We're going to bend some 1/4 inch. And this is the low heat plastic. I'm also going to show you how to make a speaker grill. We have perforated ABS with and without cloth, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So give me just one. You all know we make a bunch of different speaker rings, and these have a lot of different uses. You can use them on the router table. You can use them for mounting speakers. I imagine that. But you can also use them as a press. What I have here is our 6.5 and our 8-inch ring, and what I've done is I've put them on the router and I've rounded the outside edge of the 6.5 and the inside edge of the 8. And what I'm going to do is press fit a perforated ABS right inside, and it'll come out with a very cool result. And we'll zoom in on that so you can get a good picture of it. The only thing you need for this process is a heat gun. And I recommend one that has a thermostat control on it. The other thing I recommend are gloves. And these mechanics wear gloves are perfect. Well, I bet you they're liking that ad right there. So what I'm doing is I'm making circles, heating up the entire piece, even all the way out to the edge here. And I'm applying very little pressure. I got to kind of wait until the whole piece of plastic gets warm. And it heats up very fast. Here, I'll show you. Heats up very fast, and you can burn it and or pull it apart. So you got to be careful. Heat it nice and evenly. The other thing you can use is take a piece of wood, heat it up, just press it on there. Wait a couple seconds. It gives you a nice flat surface. I like to do that all the way around. All right. Take the insert out. And there's our grill. Now you can do a couple different things with it depending on what size you made it. And you don't have to make a circle. You can make a teardrop. grill and use the same procedure. What I basically have in between these two pieces is an 1/8 of an inch play. Okay? As long as the material can fit in between them, you're going to press out a really nice grill. Same material with grill cloth. You can cut this with scissors and you're ready to go. You can use any one of these. This is the most popular one right here. It's the carbon fiber. It's kind of hard to see on camera because it's got a protective film on it. But this is carbon fiber. And you have the burl, the gray burl, more burl, light burl, and dark burl. This is for the Honda stuff. This does some of the Volvo, some of the Mercedes. So you can use all of that. Again, circles, heating up the whole piece. Now the only thing left is to flatten out the top edges. And there you have it. A nice form piece. Keep in mind, you can do this in a teardrop, do it in a logo, any shape you want. And we have it in all those different patterns. Okay. The next thing I want to show you is how to use a heat box. We've got our heat box, got our hole. It's shaped for the piece that we need to cut. As you can see, I've tested this one already. It's got a little burn mark in it. What we're going to do is basically set that down, and actually I like to use a metal table, but we're going to use this wooden table. Metal table just will radiate a little more heat up into the plastic. What I have here is a 1/8 inch piece of acrylic, and I've made a jig to give us a radius. And how this jig is made is it's got a little footing right here, and it's a perfect radius all the way up. It's a 12-inch radius, and the total length from here to here is 17 inches. And you can make a jig for just about anything, but if you're going to heat and form plexi, you need to make something that you can set it in fully heated and maybe even add heat to it and then let it cure so it gives you that perfect form. So it comes out looking like this. And I can go like this with it, but it's going to have its memory, and its memory is the jig that you make. This jig was very easy to make. All I did was I took one of our 12-inch rings, cut it in half. I cut it a couple pieces of 4-inch wood to mount it together. I left the openings in the back on purpose so that I could heat from the back if I wanted to. And you can do that for just about anything. So let me show you how this works. We've got our heat box. We have our Steinel heat gun, and don't use this type of heat box with a heat gun that has a volume control in the back of it that either allows a lot of air in or a little air in. The Steinel heat guns are electronically controlled so they won't overheat and burn themselves out. So this is the only type of heat gun that I would recommend using this procedure with. And what I'm going to do is set it at 600 degrees. Let's go for 800, why not? We're pressed for time here. I'm going to stick it in the hole. And I'm going to aim it coming this way, and it's going to fill that chamber with heat. And as you can see, we're going to have a hard time getting that in there, but not when we heat it up. So we're going to put this on here. You see it starting to curl, and all I'm going to do is take it and flip it over. It'll fall back down, curl the other way, fall back down, curl the other way. There's our temperature gauge on our heat gun, 810 degrees Fahrenheit. And since it's electronically controlled, it will hold that temperature for us. It won't get any hotter. Okay, it's just about ready. Just going to give it a little more touch up on the top. I'm going to keep my heat gun running because I may need it. But look at this. Okay, I'm going to place it in the jig. I'm going to start at one end, flush it at one end. Now I'm flushing it up against the bumper here and the edge that's nearest to me, press fitting it in. Check that out. Fit in there beautifully. And what I do recommend, sometimes if you get a little cool spot in there, it'll be like flat. Just take your heat gun. Now that it's in the jig, its natural resting position will be the force of that jig holding it in there. So just heat it up again. And depending on the angle that you're working on, which we're going to do a little steeper angle in a second, you can use cold water, ice water, and that will cool it down faster, but you also risk cracking it. So this is our plexi bender. I'm sure some of you have used it or seen it before. I'll set this over here. This is a very cool piece for doing sharper angles. And if you're making jigs, if you guys are going to come to CES, we have a gauge display that kind of looks like a butterfly, and it's got multiple bends in it. And you can use this for multiple bends. And I'll use a piece of 1/4 inch here, which we were playing around with earlier. Got to take the paper off. There's not much to it. Depending on what you're working on, use a pencil and mark the edge on where you want it bent, and just lay it on here. Just lay it on here just like that. And you can also speed up the process if you want by heating the top. But as you can see, that's 1/4 inch, and immediately it's starting to fold up because it's starting to heat. You want to make sure you don't overheat it because you'll put bubbles in it. And that's not always the intention. Okay, we're just about ready here. This is 1/4 inch. And if you start bending it and it starts fighting a little bit, just hold it over the heating element and let it bend itself. I'm applying very little pressure. And depending on what you're working on, you may have a jig ready for this. But you can fold that 180 degrees. The next thing I'm going to show you is adhesives or attaching. I'm going to show you the basic adhesives and some more advanced adhesives for acrylic, ABS, even wood to plastic, metal to plastic, all kinds of cool stuff. So stay tuned. The plexiglass is cool. Pull it out of our mold, our jig, and it's ready to go. Now you're ready to put it in the car. These are our basic adhesives over here on the left. We have the Weld-On number 3, the Weld-On number 4, and the 1707. These two are very thin liquid. I'm sure some of you have used it. It kind of looks like water. And what it does to plexiglass is it'll etch it and fuse it together as if it were one piece. It works very, very well. The difference between 3 and 4 is 3 will dry a little faster. 1707 for ABS, it's not for acrylic, and it has the same design where it etches the ABS, mounts them together as if they were one piece. Works very, very well. Another part of the Weld-On family is the number 16, and this is a gel, but also works like the 3 and the 4, and takes a little bit longer. But this is really cool stuff if you're making a big enclosure, or I'm also going to show you how to put a logo in between two pieces of plexiglass. It'll look real cool. And we also have E6000, which is a great adhesive, and it comes in black or clear. And the black is great for repairing woofers. It stays pliable, so you can use that for a bunch of different uses on plastics, on ABS plastic, acrylic plastic, or the car's plastic, whatever. It's a great product. And our Cyril acrylates are our super glues. We have the hot stuff, we have the Super T, and we also have a Super Gap Filler, which comes in the green bottle, which I showed you earlier when we were working on the low heat plastic. And the accelerators, we have a mild accelerator and a fast accelerator. And I have one new product that I'm going to show you, which is made by Duramix. And this is, think of it as ABS in a tube. What you can do with this stuff is fuse together ABS if you're working on a car and you need a piece of ABS there, but how are you going to get it attached? This stuff will attach it permanently as if it were one piece. So what I have here is a piece of 3/8 that I have actually routered, sanded, and polished. And I have another piece of 3/8. And what we're going to do is put a logo in the middle of them, and then when they're dry, I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm going to take off the base piece, the masking. I'm going to put our company's logo right in the middle. I'm going to take the weld-on number 16 and I'm going to put a big puddle right in the middle, extending out. Well, that's a pretty big piece. And then I'm going to take the top, put it together, and move it around a little bit. So I'm going to take my clamps. These are really strong clamps. I'm going to place one on here. I'm going to keep them lined up. As you can see, the glue is oozing out the sides, but gravity will ooze it down, so it shouldn't mess with my buffing job. And if it does, we'll just take a little more sandpaper to it and run it over on the buffer again. I'm just going to set that over here. All right. Now, let's do some of the fast glues. Let's start with the 1707, which is not really all that fast, but for what it does, I think it's fast. It's an ABS adhesive, and there are not many ABS adhesives out there that work. Just take this. It's a milky white substance, okay, kind of hard to see. I'll pull it out of here. And this only takes a little bit, okay. And that'll fuse ABS together as if it were one piece. Now I just put it on one surface and put them together. Now we'll let that one sit there. Now I put these together earlier and I cannot get them apart. I would say that I'm fairly strong. Cannot get those apart. All right. Let's talk about the acrylic adhesives. The number 3 and the number 4 are the fast drying type. 3 and 4. Now I've got 3 in the bottle here. That's the one I like to use because it's really fast. And you can glue that together face to face or edge to edge. You can go edge to face. It doesn't matter. You don't have to prep anything. All you have to do is put it together and glue it. What's cool about this stuff is it's so thin, you can mount it together with your clamps and then glue it afterwards. You can see it trailing inside. Yeah, you can see it. Oh, I didn't even squeeze the bottle, by the way. All I did was let gravity take it. I'll do another piece while that piece is drying, face to face. Let's see if I can show you that one. And I'll just put a couple drops down. And it's water clear, you can't even see it. Here's our angle to face, or side to face, nice and strong. Surface to surface, nice and strong. So that's the weld on number 3 and the 4. The 16 is still drying, takes a little bit longer to dry. We covered the 1707. I'm going to get to the cyroacrylates in a second. What I'm going to show you now is a very cool product. It's a new product. It's made by Duramix. It's 4040. It's liquid ABS. That's what I want you to think of it as. The dispensing gun is not cheap, by the way. Neither is the product, but it works. Very cool. And I haven't put the tip on it yet because I want to show you what it looks like when it comes out of the gun. Okay. It's a liquid. Okay. It's a very cool liquid. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put the tip on. And the tips are replaceable, and 1 tip per use. And you can squeeze a whole tube out of it if you want to. But with the tip off, it's not going to harden. You got all your material in here, and until you mix it thoroughly and shoot it out, it's not going to do anything. So I'm going to put the tip on, and I'm going to glue some ABS together. And I'm going to glue some crazy shapes together just for fun. So He'll zoom in on that there. You can see it coming through the tube, mixing. Farther it gets down, the more mixed it is. I'm going to run a little bead right here. And I'm going to stick this piece of this piece of ABS right there. I'm going to run another piece on top. And let's go this way. If we were to have this huge gap, we could fill it just like this. Okay, this is a new adhesive that has hit the car stereo scene, and they actually have been using it for making model cars and model planes. It's a cyroacrylate. It comes in 3 different settings, or should I say 3 different heat ratings or quicknesses. The hot stuff is the fastest stuff. It dries in about 2 seconds, and I'm going to show you that. They also have the Super T, and then you have the Special T, which I showed you earlier, which was in the green bottle. And then you have the medium and fast activator. What I'm going to do is glue these pieces of ABS together. We'll use the hot stuff. This is the stuff I like the best. I'm going to put a little dab on here. I'm going to open up my activator and get her ready. I'm going to dip the other piece in it, lift it up, spray the activator on it, and put them together. I'm going to count to like 1, 2, 3. Done. Okay? Now, I'm going to run some more on top here, on this top edge. Kind of a difficult edge to work on. And I'm going to activate it and put the piece on. What was that, 2 seconds? Okay. That's how strong it is. Now, if we're working on a dash and we have something funky like this, maybe we need to fill in this area here. Okay? And that's when this Duramix 4040 comes in handy. Where you can take this product and fill these gaps. Just like that, and sand it as if it were one piece of ABS. This stuff is very cool. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and that stuff takes maybe about 10 minutes to dry. Our Duramix is nice and dry. I don't want to break the table, but it did not break like epoxy would or crack. And this piece here, where I did the gap filler, okay, really cool. I'm going to take my DA sander, my heavy DA sander with 80 grit on it. As you can see, it sands beautifully, even on this gap piece here. You could sand that flush. I mean, you wouldn't put as much material on it as I did, if that's what your goal was, but this is just to show you all the goodies. Now, for the grand finale. Remember our weld on number 16, our gel and our Select Products logo and a couple pieces of acrylic. And for all of you veterans, you know, this is an old procedure.